What if the world's richest man walked into his own company and was treated like he didn't matter? When Elon Musk disguised himself as a regular customer to test Tesla's service, what he uncovered was shocking, humiliating, and criminal. But the real twist? It's what he did next that left the entire company speechless. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Elon Musk sat behind his sleek glass desk at Tesla headquarters, the California sun glinting off the polished surfaces around him. Outside his office window, the factory pulsed with movement. Robots danced, engineers moved with purpose, and another fleet of Teslas rolled off the line. To most, it was a symbol of progress. To Elon, it was home. He leaned back in his chair, turning a miniature SpaceX rocket between his fingers, lost in thought, when a familiar voice broke the silence. "You think you know everything about Tesla, don't you?" Zach Torres asked with a crooked grin, leaning casually against the doorframe. Elon didn't look up right away. "I don't think," he said, dryly. "I know." Zach chuckled and crossed the room, dropping into the leather chair across from him. "Right. You know how the cars are made. You know what the data says. You know what your team tells you. But do you know what it feels like to be an average customer walking into one of your dealerships? One who doesn't have a six-figure income or designer shoes?" Elon arched an eyebrow, intrigued now. Tesla's known for exceptional customer service. "We've trained our teams. We've built a brand that people trust." Zach leaned forward. "Have you ever walked into a dealership as a regular person, without anyone knowing who you are? No entourage, no assistant, no billionaire halo?" Elon paused. The question hung in the air like a challenge wrapped in discomfort. "Of course not," he admitted. "Everyone knows my face." "Exactly," Zach said, pouncing, "which means you only ever get the red carpet version. What if you went in disguise? No name, no title, just a guy wanting to buy his first electric car." Elon scoffed. "You want me to wear a wig and fake mustache?" Zach smirked. "I want you to become Eddie Mercer, a 45-year-old high school science teacher, lives in a modest apartment, drives a beat-up Honda. Smart, practical, passionate about sustainability, but on a teacher's salary." Elon tilted his head, slowly warming to the idea. "You're serious?" "As serious as your Mars colonization plan," Zach replied. "Think of it as a real-time audit. Let's see if your dealerships are living up to the mission or just playing a part when the cameras are on." A long silence settled between them as Elon stared at the Tesla logo on the wall. The idea was bold, a little absurd, and yet, something about it stirred a spark in him. He prided himself on innovation, on breaking rules. Maybe it was time to break a few internal assumptions, too. "All right," Elon finally said, his voice low. "Let's do it, but we do it right. Full disguise, backstory, voice training. I want this airtight." Zach's eyes lit up. "I know just the person. Mia Chen, Hollywood makeup artist. She's made actors look like aliens and presidents. She'll make you look like Eddie Mercer." The plan took shape quickly. Elon would pose as a mild-mannered teacher researching electric vehicles. No VIP treatment, no corporate shields, just honest questions and a limited budget. As they sketched out the details, Elon felt a surge of excitement, something he hadn't felt in a while. Not the high of launching a rocket or closing a deal. This was different. This was personal. "You really think I'll be treated poorly?" he asked as Zach typed up their plan on a tablet. Zach glanced up. "I think you're going to be surprised. Maybe even disappointed." Elon smirked. "Care to make it interesting?" Zach leaned back with a grin. "If I win, you have to fix what you find, without firing people. Real changes, real leadership. And if I win, you get to watch me work in customer service training for a month." They shook hands, sealing the deal. Later that night, Elon stood in front of a full-length mirror as Mia Chen worked her magic. A bushy beard, wire-rimmed glasses, a padded nose, and a subtle change in posture transformed him. Gone was the billionaire entrepreneur. In his place stood a middle-aged teacher with weary eyes and modest clothes. He didn't recognize himself. "Eddie Mercer," he said softly, testing the voice. "High school science teacher. Lives in Alameda. Drives a 2007 Civic with a dented door." Mia nodded, satisfied. "Just don't touch your face." Zach snapped a photo. "Ready to meet your company, Elon?" He took one last look in the mirror and smiled. "No," he said. "Ready to meet Eddie Mercer." And with that, the most unexpected Tesla investigation began. Saturday arrived under a pale California sky, and Elon Musk, no, Eddie Mercer, stood in the parking lot of the Bay Bridge Tesla dealership, gripping the handle of his rental Honda Civic. The car was dusty and dented, a perfect match for his fictional backstory. The nervous flutter in his stomach surprised him. He had stood before Congress, faced down Wall Street doubters, and launched rockets into orbit. Yet here he was, sweating under his tweed jacket and wondering if his fake beard would hold through a handshake. Across the parking lot, the gleaming glass facade of the Tesla dealership sparkled in the morning light. Shiny Model 3S and Model Ys were lined up in front, pristine and proud. A steady stream of customers, some dressed in high-end casual wear and some in designer business attire, wandered through the lot, often greeted within moments by sharply dressed salespeople. Eddie walked with an intentional modesty. Rounded shoulders, slow gait, a bit of hesitation in his steps. He passed through the front doors into the cool, climate-controlled air of the showroom. The scent of new leather and freshly cleaned floors hit him like a wave. Around him, the Tesla universe buzzed with sleek sophistication. Touch screens, holographic displays, soft jazz humming through invisible speakers. And yet, no one noticed him. For 10 minutes, Eddie wandered the showroom floor, peering into the windows of a pearl-white Model 3, lingering near a kiosk that explained Tesla's full self-driving capability, flipping through a glossy brochure. He stood directly beneath a camera, well within the line of sight of two sales associates who were chatting by the front desk, sipping coffee from Tesla-branded mugs. Nothing. Across the floor, a young couple in stylish golf attire had barely entered when a salesman named Trevor, identifiable by his name tag and slick-back hair, approached them with a wide smile and an outstretched hand. "Welcome to Tesla," Trevor said warmly, shaking their hands. "Looking for something exciting today?" Eddie watched with a slow, dawning realization. He wasn't seen. He circled another Model 3 and made deliberate eye contact with Trevor, who looked up briefly and looked away. Instead of acknowledging him, Trevor returned his attention to the couple, laughing at a joke and escorting them toward the higher-end models. 25 minutes passed. Finally, with visible reluctance, Trevor approached Eddie. "Finding everything okay?" he asked, glancing down at his phone mid-sentence. "Yes, thanks," Eddie said in his practiced voice. "I'm interested in the Model 3. I'm a science teacher looking to go electric for the first time. It's a big purchase for me." Trevor nodded, still half distracted. Cool. Yeah, the Model 3 is our entry-level option. Great range, easy to drive, you'll love it. Can you tell me more about the battery?" Eddie asked. "I commute about 40 miles a day." Trevor waved a hand dismissively. "They go forever on a single charge. You'll be fine." "Forever?" Eddie bit his tongue. He knew the exact range figures for every Tesla model, and Trevor's casual overstatement grated like a wrong equation on a whiteboard. "What's the actual range for the base model?" Eddie pressed gently. Trevor sighed, checking his phone again. "Like 300 miles or something, more than you need." Wrong again. The standard Model 3 SPA-rated range was closer to 272 miles. The gap between truth and sales pitch widened like a canyon. Eddie pressed on. "What are the financing options like? As a teacher, I'm trying to keep the monthly payment under $500. That was the magic word, teacher. Trevor's demeanor changed instantly. The mild interest drained from his face. "We've got standard financing through our partners," he said, glancing back toward the showroom entrance. "Look, you should take this." He handed Eddie a brochure. "And maybe check back during the week. We're pretty booked for test drives today." "But I'm here now," Eddie said. "I drove 2 hours." Trevor gave a tight smile. "Weekdays are less hectic. I'll give you a call to set something up." Before Eddie could reply, Trevor turned on his heel and hurried toward a sharply dressed man who had just walked in. "Welcome to Tesla," Trevor called out. "Looking to drive something today?" Eddie stood frozen for a moment, the words stinging in his ears. Zach, across the room pretending to browse, raised an eyebrow. Eddie gave a subtle shake of his head. A knot formed in Elon's chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was systemic. With a quiet exhale, Eddie murmured loud enough for the hidden mic to catch, "Maybe I'll check out that new Hyundai EV instead." No one tried to stop him. No one called out. As the glass door clicked shut behind him, Elon Musk, the man who built Tesla to democratize electric vehicles, walked into the California sunlight, holding a glossy brochure he would never read. The Tesla experience, it seemed, didn't come standard. The week following Elon's first undercover visit was a blur of disbelief, frustration, and reflection. Sitting alone in his office late at night, the disguise long removed but the sting still fresh, he rewatched the footage Zach had captured through his glasses. Every dismissive glance, every lie, every moment of being overlooked, it all unfolded with brutal clarity. And the worst part? This wasn't just about one bad employee. It was a mirror into something deeper, something systemic. He had to go back, not as Elon Musk, but as Eddie Mercer, again. The following Wednesday morning, Elon sat once more in the makeup chair at Mia Chen's studio. "We're making a few tweaks," Mia said, blending a subtle touch of sun-weathered texture into the skin on his cheeks. "You're a science teacher, remember? Outdoors on field trips, standing in front of whiteboards, recess duty." She gave a soft smile, but her tone was serious. "You sure you want to do this again?" "I need to know if it was a fluke," Elon said quietly, "or if this is who we've become." By 10 a.m., Eddie Mercer was reborn. The slightly hunched posture, the softer voice, the worn shoes and polyester shirt that didn't quite fit right. Even Elon himself couldn't see the billionaire in the mirror. Only a modest, middle-aged science teacher with tired eyes and a hesitant smile. This time, Zach suggested a different tactic. "Avoid Trevor," he said. "Try to speak with someone else. Maybe the weekend staff was the issue. Let's find out." At exactly 11 a.m., Eddie entered the Bay Bridge dealership for a second time. It was quieter than Saturday. Only a few customers were browsing and the atmosphere was more subdued. A smiling receptionist at the front desk greeted him immediately, a spark of hope flickering in Eddie's chest. "Welcome to Tesla. First time with us?" "Yes," Eddie said, returning the smile. "I'm interested in the Model 3. "Great choice," she said, tapping a few keys on her tablet. "Let me find a product specialist to assist you." Moments later, a salesperson appeared. Dana, according to her name tag. Mid-30s, poised and polished in appearance. She shook Eddie's hand with practiced professionalism and led him toward a deep blue Model 3. "So, Mr. Mercer," Dana said, "what brings you in today?" "I'm a teacher," Eddie said. "Been saving up for a while, looking for my first electric car, trying to stay under $500 a month." At the word teacher, Dana's eyes flickered, not with malice, but something colder. Calculation. Eddie saw the shift, subtle yet unmistakable. Her smile remained, but the warmth drained away. "Well, the Model 3 is our most affordable option," Dana said, leading him around the car. "It's a good starting point, better than the Ioniq at least." "The Hyundai?" Eddie asked, surprised. "I've read decent reviews." Dana gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Oh, sure, if you want a fire hazard, Tesla's battery tech is light years ahead." Eddie blinked. That was a bold and inaccurate claim. The Ioniq 5, like the Tesla, had an excellent safety record. But Dana wasn't offering facts. She was offering fear. He asked about regenerative braking. "Smart brakes?" She waved it off. "Car does everything for you. You don't have to think about it." Eddie frowned. The oversimplification wasn't just lazy, it was insulting to a customer wanting to understand what they were buying. And when he pointed out a charging cable stretched across a walkway, Dana casually kicked it under a display stand. No apology, no action. Finally, they sat down at her desk. "Let's talk numbers," Eddie said, leaning forward. Dana smiled. "Of course. But before we do, have you considered the long-range model? It's just a little more each month and comes with premium connectivity. Much better experience." "I really need to stay under $500, Eddie said, firm but polite. "Teacher budget, remember?" Dana hesitated. "Well, I can check what's possible. Might need to stretch the loan term a bit. Or we could look at a certified pre-owned model instead, more in line with your salary." There it was again, not overt but obvious. A judgment, a label. Teacher equals poor equals not worth my time. Eddie pushed. "I'd like to speak to someone in financing, see the actual numbers, just for the base model." Dana nodded, less enthusiastically this time. "I'll check if Raj is available." As she left, Eddie sat quietly, watching the showroom. A young family stood by a Model Y, their 2 children peering through the glass. They looked excited, ordinary, hopeful. Would they be welcomed? Or sized up and dismissed, just like him? The pattern was emerging. The system wasn't built to serve people like Eddie, and if Elon Musk hadn't seen it with his own eyes, who would believe it? The truth was uglier than he feared. And Eddie Mercer was just getting started. Eddie Mercer followed Raj through the gleaming Tesla showroom, his steps slow, his mind racing. The contrast between Raj's polished suit and Eddie's frumpy teacher attire was jarring. Raj moved with the casual authority of someone used to being obeyed, and Eddie, though a billionaire beneath the disguise, felt the full weight of being perceived as a man without power. The farther they walked, the more obvious it became. Here at the Bay Bridge dealership, customers weren't valued equally. They were weighed, measured, and, if found lacking, quietly pushed aside. Raj's office was pristine. Diplomas, awards, and customer testimonials lined the walls. Every photo featured sharply dressed men and women, all beaming with new Tesla keys in hand. None of them looked like Eddie. "Please have a seat," Raj said with a well-practiced smile. "Dana tells me you're looking at the Model 3 and trying to stay under a $500 monthly payment?" "That's right," Eddie replied, keeping his tone earnest. "I've been saving for a while. I have $8,000 to put down." Raj's eyebrows lifted ever so slightly, clearly not expecting that level of preparation. Still, he didn't skip a beat. "That's a solid down payment," he said, tapping on his keyboard. "But there are a few things you should know. The listed price is just the starting point. We've got delivery fees, documentation charges, and essential add-ons." "Essential?" Eddie asked. "Like what?" "Oh, just basic things," Raj said casually. "Paint protection, wheel locks, extended warranty, premium connectivity. You'll want them if you're planning to keep the car long-term." "But aren't those optional?" Raj's smile didn't falter. "Technically, yes, but I strongly recommend them. They preserve the value of your investment." Eddie leaned forward slightly. "What would the actual price be with just the base model, taxes, and required fees?" Raj's fingers paused on the keyboard. For a brief second, the mask slipped. Just enough for Eddie to see it. Annoyance. A flicker of frustration that his usual script wasn't working. "I'll print that out for you," Raj said smoothly. "Just give me a moment." As Raj left the office, Eddie's eyes wandered to the computer screen still open on the desk. A payment calculator sat in the corner. Eddie leaned forward and read the numbers. Loan term, 60 months. Price, $46,000. Down payment, $8,000. Interest rate, 4.1%. Monthly payment, $647. But when Raj returned with a printed quote moments later, the number had changed. $712 a month, Raj announced, placing the paper in front of him. "That's higher than I expected," Eddie said carefully. Raj shrugged. "Standard rate is 7.9% for your profile." Eddie's heart pounded. My profile? He didn't even know Eddie's credit score. just made assumptions based on the clothes, the job, based on what Eddie looked like. "And if I finance through my credit union?" Eddie asked, still pretending to be the earnest customer. "You could do that," Raj replied, voice suddenly chilly, "but you'd lose our seamless in-house process, and you risk losing the car. These things go fast." False urgency, classic pressure tactic. Elon Musk had trained hundreds of sales teams on how not to behave like this, and here it was, happening in his own dealership. Before Eddie could respond, voices drifted in from the hallway. He froze. "Another tire kicker," someone said. Raj's voice responded, low but clear. "Teacher, thinks he can afford a Tesla?" A second man chuckled. "Let him waste his time." Eddie stared down at the brochure in his lap, his jaw tightening. His stomach churned, not with embarrassment, but with anger. Not because he was treated like a fool, but because thousands of real people were being treated this way every day. People who saved, sacrificed, and dreamed of driving a Tesla, only to be dismissed for not fitting the image. Raj returned moments later, all smiles once again. "Sorry about that. Got caught up in a quick question. So, what do you think of the numbers?" Eddie didn't even look at the paper. "I'd like to schedule a test drive." "Ah," Raj said. "Well, we're fully booked for test drives today." Eddie pointed through the glass to a family being led to a car outside. Debbie just walked in. "They're pre-approved for a Model X," Raj said quickly. "High-priority clients." Eddie stared at him, saying nothing. Raj shifted. "Look, maybe the Model 3 isn't the right fit. There's always the Nissan Leaf." That was the final straw. Eddie stood, folding the brochure neatly. "I'll think about it." Raj smiled and extended his hand. "Looking forward to helping you again." Eddie ignored it and walked out. As he stepped into the sunlight, the disguise still clinging to his skin, a quiet storm built behind his eyes. This wasn't just a bad day. This was a betrayal. And Eddie Mercer wasn't walking away. He was preparing for war. 3 days later, Eddie Mercer stood once again outside the Bay Bridge Tesla dealership. The summer heat shimmered off the pavement, but Eddie's thoughts were colder than ever. This time, he wasn't just playing the part of a curious customer, he was a man on a mission. The previous encounters had disturbed him deeply. What he had hoped was a one-time fluke was now beginning to feel like something systemic. And yet, a part of him still wanted to believe it could be redeemed. That the culture of dismissal, deception, and discrimination wasn't deeply rooted. But as he adjusted his glasses and took a deep breath, something inside him whispered, "Be ready for anything." Zach had suggested one final visit, not just to confirm suspicions, but to observe how they handled a knowledgeable customer. Elon had prepared a list of technical questions, so precise, so detail-oriented, that no honest and well-trained Tesla employee should have had difficulty addressing them. After all, it was their job. This time, Eddie was greeted by a new face, Kevin, a young salesman with a rehearsed grin and nervous energy. He checked Eddie's appointment and motioned for him to wait. "We're running a bit behind on test drives," Kevin said, glancing at his tablet. "Could be 30 minutes or so." Eddie nodded. "No problem. While I wait, I've got a few questions." Kevin stiffened slightly. "Sure," he said, trying to smile. "Fire away." "What battery chemistry is used in the standard range Model 3, NCA or LFP?" Eddie asked, pulling out a notepad. Kevin blinked. Lithium ion?" he offered, voice unsure. "They're all really advanced." Eddie raised an eyebrow. "Yes, but the chemistry matters for charging behavior and thermal performance." Kevin chuckled awkwardly. "You've clearly done your homework." Eddie didn't laugh. "What about the octaval design and the heat pump? Has it changed in the most recent production runs?" Kevin looked down at his shoes. "Honestly, I'd have to check with our service guys. Most customers don't ask about that." "But they should," Eddie said firmly. "Especially when they're spending over $40,000. Before Kevin could answer, a commotion near the front desk caught Eddie's attention. A young family, parents with two small children, stood in a heated exchange with the receptionist. "The website says $39,990, the father said, holding a printout. "Why are you saying it's $46,000 now?" The receptionist gave a tight-lipped smile. "That's before the necessary packages, sir. Everyone needs those." "But you're advertising a price you don't actually sell at," the mother replied, frustration rising. Just then, Vince Parker stepped out of his glass-walled office, his smile as polished as ever. "Is there a problem here?" he asked smoothly. The father explained the situation. Vince nodded, keeping his voice low but loud enough for others to hear. "Tesla is a premium brand. Our pricing reflects the quality of our vehicles. If that's outside your comfort zone, perhaps a different manufacturer would be more appropriate." The mother gasped. "We can afford a $40,000 car, just not one that's deceptively priced." "I apologize for the confusion," Vince said, still smiling. "But those are our terms." As the family stormed out, humiliated and disheartened, Eddie felt rage knot in his chest. He'd seen enough, and yet one last incident sealed it. Back at the Model 3 display, he noticed a long, thin scratch along the driver's side door, something that had no place on a showroom vehicle. He bent down, inspecting it more closely. The damage was obvious. When Kevin returned, Eddie pointed it out. "This model's got damage. Are you selling it as new?" Kevin crouched to look. "It'll buff out," he said, brushing it off. "Not a big deal." "It looks like a real scratch to me." Kevin's smile disappeared. "Sir, I think I know what I'm talking about. I'd like to speak to a manager." Kevin narrowed his eyes. "Are you trying to cause trouble?" Before Eddie could answer, Vince approached, his posture stiff. "Is there an issue?" "This car has visible damage," Eddie said calmly, "and your salesman dismissed it." Vince's voice turned cold. "Are you an expert in Tesla bodywork?" "I don't have to," Eddie said, standing his ground. "I can see a scratch." Vince leaned in, his voice low and firm. "Then perhaps Tesla isn't the right brand for you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Eddie stared at him. "You're turning away a paying customer over a scratch?" "We reserve our time for serious buyers," Vince replied. "Please consider whether this is the right environment for your needs." Eddie stepped back. "I had a test drive scheduled." "Appointments sometimes change," Vince said curtly. "Good day, Mr. Mercer." As he turned and walked out, something cracked open inside Elon Musk. Not just frustration or disbelief, but a sense of profound responsibility. It was no longer just about winning a bet with Zach or checking on his brand. It was about defending the dignity of every single person who had ever walked into a Tesla dealership dreaming of a better future and been told, with a smile, that they didn't belong. And that was something he could never ignore again. The sun was barely up when Elon Musk arrived at Tesla's headquarters the following Tuesday. There was no disguise today, no beard, no glasses, no worn tweed jacket. Today Elon would confront the problem head-on, not as Eddie Mercer, the overlooked science teacher, but as the CEO whose mission had just been betrayed. Lisa Chen, Tesla's head of customer experience, and Daniel Rodriguez, the COO, met him in the executive conference room. They reviewed the notes, videos, and every painful detail from Eddie's 3 visits to the Bay Bridge dealership. The evidence wasn't just compelling, it was damning. "I wish you had brought us in earlier," Lisa said, scanning the transcripts. "This is worse than we thought." "I had to see it with my own eyes," Elon replied, his voice tight. "No filters, no staged presentations, just the raw truth." By 11:30 a.m., a black Tesla Model S pulled into the Bay Bridge dealership's parking lot. Out stepped Elon Musk, flanked by Lisa, Daniel, and Sarah Chen, manager of the downtown dealership, who had delivered a model experience just days earlier. Vince Parker was already waiting out front, his silver hair gleaming under the California sun. He wore his best smile, but the tension behind his eyes was unmistakable. "Mr. Musk," Vince said, extending a hand. "We didn't expect you personally, we're honored." Elon shook his hand, calm and measured. I like to stay connected with our frontline operations. Behind Vince, a row of nervous staff lined the showroom floor. Trevor stood stiffly, eyes darting toward the executives. Dana shifted uncomfortably. Raj, the finance manager, was pale, his jaw tight. Something in the air had shifted, and they all felt it. Vince launched into his pre-prepared tour, proudly pointing out showroom features and customer amenities. Elon listened politely, but his eyes were focused. Every detail was a contrast to what he'd experienced as Eddie Mercer. The scratched Model 3 had vanished. The misplaced charging cable was now neatly tucked away. There were extra staff on the floor, all on their best behavior. But none of it could erase what had already been recorded. Inside the conference room, Vince queued up a presentation boasting about Bay Bridge's sales figures and customer satisfaction. Elon held up a hand. "Before we get into numbers," he said, "I'd like to ask your team a few questions." Vince hesitated. "Of course." Elon turned to Trevor. "How do you support a first-time buyer with questions about battery performance?" Trevor straightened. "I make sure to give honest, clear information. I tailor it to their understanding." "Dana," Elon asked, "how do you handle budget-conscious customers, say, a teacher saving for their first electric car?" "I respect all customers equally," Dana replied, a little too quickly. "We never push expensive options if someone has a limited budget." "And Raj," Elon continued, locking eyes with the finance manager, "how do you ensure financing is transparent and fair?" "We always offer competitive rates and walk the customer through every line item," Raj said confidently. "Clarity is key." Elon nodded. "Excellent. Because that's not what happened when I visited this dealership." The room froze. Vince blinked. I'm sorry?" "I visited 3 times, Elon said calmly. "You didn't recognize me. I was Eddie Mercer." He turned to Zach, who was standing at the door, and nodded. Zach tapped his tablet, and a video began playing on the conference screen. Footage from the hidden cameras, showing every misstep in painful clarity. Trevor ignoring Eddie, Dana lying about Hyundai's safety, Raj inflating interest rates, Vince dismissing a family as tire kickers. The room was silent, except for the video. When it ended, Elon stood. "I created Tesla to change the world, not just for the wealthy, but for everyone. Teachers, nurses, parents who've saved every penny to buy one of our cars. What you've done here undermines everything we stand for." Vince stammered. "Mr. Musk, I assure you—" "No," Elon cut in, his tone sharp. "I was there. I lived it. You can't talk your way out of this." Trevor looked stunned. Dana covered her mouth. Raj paled. Lisa stepped forward. "We're launching a company-wide retraining program, effective immediately. Every customer, no matter their income or appearance, must receive the same level of service." Sarah Chen added, "We're starting with this location." Vince's eyes widened. "You're replacing me?" "That's up to you," Elon said. "You can stay and rebuild this culture from the ground up, or you can walk away. But the way things have been run here, that ends today." The weight of his words filled the room. No one spoke. No one dared. The reckoning had begun, and the days of ignoring the Eddie Mercers of the world were officially over. As the tension in the conference room began to settle, Elon Musk remained standing at the head of the table, his presence commanding. Vince Parker sat stiffly, hands clenched on the table, the practiced charm from earlier completely gone. Dana and Trevor avoided eye contact. Raj fidgeted, beads of sweat forming at his temple. But even amidst the embarrassment and accountability, Elon sensed something else, something deeper. A rot that went beyond customer service. Something that made Vince more nervous than he should have been, even after being exposed. During the short break that followed the training announcement, Elon pulled Zach aside and spoke in a low voice. "Something's off with Vince," Elon muttered. "He's too nervous, even for someone who just got caught mistreating customers." Zach nodded. "I thought the same thing. You want me to look into it?" "Everything," Elon said. "Sales records, inventory, paper trails, quietly." While Lisa and Sarah continued outlining the new training program to the stunned staff, Zach slipped out and made his way to a secure room nearby, where Tesla's internal systems could be accessed without interference. He had clearance. After all, this was now an official audit. It didn't take long before irregularities began to surface. VIN numbers that didn't match delivery records, vehicles listed as sold but never picked up, names on sales contracts that didn't correspond with real buyers. And then, the most telling sign, 28 Tesla vehicles had been flagged as sold and delivered within the last 6 months, but had mysteriously vanished from U.S. distribution. Zach's brow furrowed. Where had they gone? A deeper probe, linked to off-site vehicle tracking, showed those same VIN numbers pinging from international ports. Germany, Dubai, Singapore. How had they left the country? Who had approved the transport? Then he found invoice data, linked to a shell corporation operating out of a P.O. box in Nevada. Payment records led to offshore accounts under 2 names: Vince Parker and Raj Mehta. Zach's blood ran cold. He rushed back into the conference room, a tablet in hand, just as the retraining overview was wrapping up. He approached Elon discreetly, leaned in and whispered, "We have a much bigger problem." Elon's eyes narrowed. "How bad?" "Worse than we thought," Zach replied, slipping him the tablet. 28 vehicles, faked sales, offshore accounts, a shell company, Vince and Raj. Elon turned to Lisa and Sarah. "Excuse us for a moment." A few minutes later, they returned. Elon's jaw set, his energy different. He stood tall before the staff, but this time his voice was sharper, colder. "There's one more matter we need to address," he said. "Something I discovered during my visits as Eddie Mercer, and something Zach confirmed just now." Vince stiffened in his seat. Raj looked like he wanted to disappear. "I noticed inconsistencies in inventory," Elon continued. "Vehicles marked as sold, but with no customer follow-up. I assumed at first it was poor paperwork, but it wasn't." He turned directly to Vince. "Would you like to explain why nearly 30 cars, supposedly sold to U.S. customers, ended up in shipping containers overseas?" The silence was instant and suffocating. I don't know what you're talking about," Vince stammered. "Yes, you do," Elon said, voice like steel. "We traced the payments, shell companies, offshore accounts, false names. These cars were sold outside the U.S. at inflated prices, skipping wait lists, avoiding taxes, and lining your pockets." Raj jumped up. "You can't prove—" Daniel Rodriguez, Tesla's COO, stepped forward and tossed a folder onto the table. "We can. Bank transfers, matching VIN numbers, internal camera footage, the port warehouse. It's all here." Vince tried to stand, but 2 Tesla security guards were already entering the room. The moment was surreal. Staff watching as their manager, the man who'd once demanded perfection from others, was now being quietly handcuffed. Raj followed shortly, his face blank with shock. "This was never about just poor service," Elon said to the remaining staff. "This was theft, fraud, exploiting the company, and worse, exploiting customers." The team sat frozen, processing the reality that their leaders had been criminals, hiding behind polished sales pitches and fake smiles. Trevor looked crushed. Dana covered her mouth with trembling fingers. But Elon wasn't done. "This happened under your noses," he said. "That doesn't make you guilty. But it means we all have to be vigilant. You must question what's happening around you. Speak up, because silence is what lets rot like this grow." He paused, letting the weight of that truth settle into the room. Then, softer, "You still have a chance to rebuild, to be part of something that actually matters. But this is your wake-up call." And with that, the illusion of Bay Bridge's prestige shattered, leaving behind something far more valuable, the painful beginning of real change. The conference room at Bay Bridge Tesla was eerily silent after Vince and Raj had been escorted out in handcuffs. Their exit left behind not just a vacuum in leadership, but a haunting reminder of how easily a company's soul could be sold for profit. Elon Musk stood quietly at the head of the table, staring at the shocked faces of the remaining staff. He had unmasked more than a fraud operation that day. He had exposed a broken culture. But in that silence, a new opportunity emerged, one not built on deception, but on accountability and transformation. He looked to Dana first. "You asked earlier if everyone here was getting fired," Elon said, his tone softer now. "The answer is no. But I am giving each of you a choice, right here, right now. You can walk out the door with Vince's mindset, or you can help us rebuild something better than ever before." Dana swallowed hard and slowly nodded. Trevor, eyes still red with shame, raised his hand hesitantly. I really didn't know," he said quietly. "But I want to do better. I want to learn. I got into this job because I believed in Tesla's mission. I lost sight of that." "That's all I needed to hear," Elon said, offering the young salesman a reassuring nod. "Starting today, that mission is front and center again." The very next morning, Tesla launched its new initiative, Project Horizon, a complete overhaul of its customer experience program. Sarah Chen, the manager from the downtown dealership, was appointed interim director of customer culture. Her first task? To retrain every employee at Bay Bridge and beyond using the model she had cultivated at her own store, where respect, empathy, and product transparency weren't just policies, they were values. Elon didn't delegate this one from afar. He personally sat in on the first training session at Bay Bridge. Dressed in his signature black tee and blazer, he stood beside Sarah as she introduced a new standard of excellence, one that no longer measured success solely by units sold or upgrades pushed, but by customer trust, satisfaction, and retention. "Every customer who walks through these doors," Elon told the group, "should feel seen, heard, respected, whether they arrive in a beat-up Honda or a Bentley." The message rippled across the company. Within weeks, the Tesla Mystery Shopper program rolled out nationwide. Dozens of undercover agents representing all walks of life, teachers, nurses, veterans, retirees, were sent to Tesla locations to evaluate customer service through a real-world lens. The data was reviewed at corporate every week. Locations that excelled were celebrated and rewarded. Those that failed were retrained and, if necessary, restructured. Meanwhile, Sarah's influence was undeniable. Under her leadership, the Bay Bridge dealership underwent a complete cultural renovation. Posters, once dominated by sales metrics, were replaced with handwritten notes from satisfied customers. The lounge was redesigned to be more welcoming, and training modules emphasized emotional intelligence alongside technical expertise. Trevor and Dana, once caught in the slipstream of a toxic system, now became some of the most vocal advocates for change. Even customers noticed. "I came in expecting to be ignored," one young teacher wrote in a 5-star review, "but I was treated like royalty. Thank you, Tesla." 6 months later, Elon stood before the global Tesla team during the company's annual summit. On the giant screen behind him was a familiar face, only this time it wasn't Elon Musk, it was Eddie Mercer. Gasps and laughter erupted across the crowd as Elon told the full story, how a bet with a friend had turned into one of the most important revelations of his career. He shared Eddie's journey from being dismissed, lied to, and mocked, to being the catalyst for a company-wide transformation. "Elon Musk may run Tesla," he said, "but it was Eddie Mercer, the humble science teacher, who reminded us why Tesla exists in the first place." As the summit erupted into applause, Elon's voice turned reflective. "Technology can change the world," he said, "but only if it's built on integrity. When we treat every customer with dignity, we don't just sell cars, we build trust. And trust? That's the future." That night, Elon returned to his office. On the shelf sat the now retired Eddie Mercer disguise, beard, glasses and all, carefully preserved in a display case. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Because sometimes, the only way to fix what's broken is to become the very person you're trying to help. What began as a simple bet between friends turned into one of the most powerful and eye-opening journeys in Elon Musk's career. Through the eyes of Eddie Mercer, a humble science teacher, Elon discovered that even the most visionary companies can lose sight of their core values when profit overshadows purpose. This inspiring story is more than just a behind-the-scenes look at Tesla. It's a wake-up call for every business, leader, and individual. It reminds us that how we treat people, regardless of their appearance, status, or income, reveals more about our integrity than any mission statement ever could. In a world driven by speed, status, and sales, this story brings us back to something timeless: empathy. It challenges us to ask tough questions about our own organizations, our daily choices, and the assumptions we make about others. Let this be your reminder that true leadership starts with listening, and lasting change begins with humility. If this story moved you, surprised you, or made you think differently about what it means to lead with purpose, we invite you to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who believes that kindness and accountability still matter. Because the most inspiring stories are the ones we carry forward, and you never know who might need to hear this one today.